Let me see some smiles out there. How you feeling on this Friday? Okay, that was pretty meh right there. Let's try that again. San Antonio, AT&T Final Four Fan Fest. How you feeling? Well, it's time to feel just a little bit better, if that was even possible. It's time to say hello to 11-time NBA All-Star, 2-time NBA champion, former ACC Rookie of the Year, and oh yeah, Mr. Basketball for the great state of Texas. There's no debate that he's the great from the Lone Star State. Let's say hello to Chris Bosh. Chris, welcome to AT&T here at the Final Four Fan Fest. Yeah.
Hello, hello, hello.
As we look at all the smiling faces, they've been waiting in anticipation, super excited to meet you.
Yeah.
And you're no stranger to this great state. And I want to go right there because there was that magical year, 40-0, Lincoln High School. What did it mean to play sports in this great state of Texas and then to have that perfect season as a high school player?
Oh, man, that was you brought up a lot of interesting emotions, man. So, yeah, for those that don't know, back in 2002 when I was a youngster, I played on a great team from Dallas, Texas, Lincoln High School. That's where I'm from. And we had a thrilling ride in 2002. Won state championship, won a national championship, 40-0. Kind of like one of those, if you watch a movie and it's the high school team movie, that was one of those things. And so I'm always very firmly connected to it. I'm connected to San Antonio, too. I've been coming here my whole life. My uncle, he's since passed, rest in peace to him, but I've been coming out here a lot of summers, Fiesta, Texas, you know, in that heat, getting those cheap tickets when it's 100 degrees. Y'all know those ones, yeah.
And it's interesting you bring up family because that's the next thing we're going to talk about. So 40-0 was great, but to do that and then graduate from Lincoln, also being a member of the National Honor Society, education has always been a priority in your family and your household. How important was that structure in your early upbringing for you to continue on and know the importance of education?
Well, it was everything. So all of my aunts, I have 4 aunts that I grew up around, and all of them were teachers. And one was a cop. So, you know, it was no nonsense. We grew up in a no-nonsense house. We were always held accountable. You know, things might have been rough outside sometimes, but my grandma always used to say, make sure you get your lesson. So I've always tried to make sure to keep pushing that, and especially at a young age, that's what it was all about. So I give credit to my family makeup for holding me accountable and making sure that I wasn't a knucklehead and getting involved in things that I shouldn't have been.
And along those lines, let's give a description again. This is not from me. This is from your brother, Joel. He describes you as a nerdy kind of geek.
A nerdy kind of geek?
That's how he described you as. He said he's always trying to learn something. He's always trying to read something. So it sounds funky at first, but it truly is a compliment.
Yeah.
And it truly is who you are. Not the nerdy geek part, but
not the nerdy geek part. I'm not a nerdy geek,
right?
You know.
And last night I had called your former coach at Georgia Tech, the great Paul Hewitt. And I said, Coach Hewitt, I need some information that you can give me on Chris that's interesting. He goes, wow, how much time do we have? Because it's going to take a while. First of all, I could feel him beaming through the phone of the pride that he had the ability to interact with you and that you played with him and for him at Georgia Tech. And you made that decision amongst the opportunity of many different basketball destinations and powerhouses. You chose Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Partly because of the basketball, but most importantly because of the academic element to that and the tutelage of the great Paul Hewitt.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Coach Hewitt was very, very big on education, and that was important for me at the time. It still is, of course. But just, you know, going to college, I wanted the college experience. I wanted to play in the ACC like all my heroes did before me, and Georgia Tech was the way to get there. And, you know, kind of like San Antonio, I had been going to Atlanta since I was a kid, so I had some familiar feelings with the city. Great city, right? Great college. And you know, the education just spoke to me, so I knew I wanted to kind of do both. I wanted to live in both worlds, and that was the best place to do that for me.
And something else that spoke to you, Coach Hewitt shared with me, he said, my assistant coach, Coach Diener, took Chris to the Cartoon Network in Atlanta. He said, you were just so, he's like, his eyes were lighting up. He's like, I know at that point he's going to become a Yellow Jacket because of the excitement you felt at Cartoon Network?
I want to make it sound a lot cooler than what it was, all right? You know, I was learning about the animation, management, stuff like that. But yeah, I did go, and I went again years and years and years later. But that was just the opportunity that they had at the school. The Cartoon Network was right across the street, and it's crazy because it doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so those were the things that interest me. I was into computer graphics. At the time, I wanted to learn that portion of computer science. You know, basketball eventually took over more of my life than I anticipated, but at that time, you know, I was very, very interested in it. So with Keener saying my eyes lit up, that's what he means by that, because it was something I was really interested in. Now, if you went to, like, if you took me to a college history course, you wouldn't see any light in my eyes. You know what I mean? It'd be total opposite.
He found that level that he needed to get to on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Coach Hewitt also told me, he goes, he always challenges himself on and off the court. He said he's the ultimate teammate, the ultimate competitor. And he said if there's one thing that Chris hates, he hates losing. And he's willing to do whatever it takes to be the ultimate teammate and sacrifice whatever he has to do for the team to win, for the greater good. And that's been evident throughout your career. The 2 NBA championships, and every time you went to a team, you've made it better. And he also added, speaking of going to teams, he said when you went to Toronto, he said it was so cold you stayed inside and learned how to speak Spanish.
Yeah, that's true. I learned more in Miami, of course. No knock against anything, but yeah, you know, I started learning Spanish. You know, like you know, you heard it. I'm a bookworm. I'm self-proclaimed bookworm. You know, but I like doing other things too. And basketball, you know, I was a bookworm because basketball was all I ever wanted to do. You know, so looking back on it, my heroes were MJ, Kobe, winners. You know what I mean? I wanted to hold up that trophy. Tim Duncan here too. You know, those guys showed what winning was, but the consistency year after year. So if I wasn't living up to that, if I was short of that, it would be misery. Like my man Pat Riley always says, there's winning and there's misery. That's why I'm glad I don't play basketball anymore, man. You know, I take it too serious, man. Yeah,
we got rid of that misery element. We got some happiness and some hobbies. And you spoke of many of those things about being a bookworm, but in addition to that, that's awfully modest because you're an accomplished author. You've been a music producer. There's a long list. Engineering, we can go on and on. It will take forever. But in your book, Letters to a Young Athlete, it's truly like a reflection. And when you read this book, it's so special. You can envision Chris talking to his younger self, and for so many other young athletes that are going through so much emotionally, mentally, physically. Talk about that experience.
Well, the inspiration in me writing the book was for not necessarily only the young athlete, but anybody trying to accomplish something. You know, after I was done with the game, I had to medically retire, for those who don't know. Just suddenly, my world had changed, you know, and that was a hard thing to deal with. So I wanted to write something for people to inspire them to do the process. You know, all I can tell you is my story, you know, and what I felt got me to the point that I got to. And I've been one of the luckiest people in the world not because like I made the pros or anything, but I had people picking me up to go to practice. You know, my dad took me to school every morning. I take my son to school every morning. You know, they took us to the games. They had to feed us. I know they got tired of feeding us. I know we were stinky and loud and just packing up and stinking up their car, but they did it for us, you know. And I always remembered those stories on the way to where my destination was. So I wanted to kind of, you know, break it down a little bit to where people could understand. And I actually brought some books. I see some kids here. You want a book? Yeah, I'm going to bring a book for you. And I see you right there, too. Yeah.
That's special.
Yeah, I see some young athletes out here.
And in that true focus of never stop learning, never stop getting better, that's something you still focus on to this day. You said you take your son to school. He could actually take you to school at UT, right? Because you're taking class there right now. Tell us a little bit about this class I would repeat it, but I'll mess it up. So you go ahead and tell us what you're studying at UT Austin there.
Yeah, so I've been taking a program there in machine learning and artificial intelligence and computers and all that stuff. I guess I'm at a mode where I'm trying to, figure out what's next for myself, because I'm watching my kids grow up. They're in middle school and high school now and elementary. I have 5 kids. I got a lot of kids. And so watching them learn and have fun and you ever see a kid do some art and they're like, man, this is sick, man, look at this. Yeah. I'm like, what happens to that? Because when you're an older person, you'll draw it and be like, yeah, this is really bad. So I'm just trying to get back connected to that part of myself, trying to learn more, trying to have fun with life again. I not that it wasn't fun before, but it was so serious with basketball and I was trying to accomplish my dreams. I put everything in on that. So now it's about my family, about my brain, about trying to preserve it, stuff like that,
And let's talk about that. Here we are. It's one of the finest sports in all the land, college basketball. And your experience, ACC Rookie of the Year, and you were able to go back and you had to watch from a spectator's point of view to watch Coach Hewitt and some of your teammates actually get all the way to the championship game.
You know what city that was in?
What city was it?
It was in San Antonio. It's crazy.
Exactly. Full circle
really
moment.
Crazy,
and
yeah.
he talked about that, and he said, I said, when I interviewed Coach, I said, Coach, how many times have you watched that game? He said, never. I've never watched it. I said, well, why not? And he said, I know how it ended. And that's when Jim Calhoun, the UConn Huskies, won the championship. But the fact that he got there when they were ranked, they were picked to finish 10th in the ACC that year. But it goes a lot to Coach Hewitt, but also that foundation that you helped build. And he talked about that. He goes, that championship team had a lot of influence from Chris Bosh, and he may tell you otherwise, but that's the truth.
That he was really nice saying that. We were a young bunch of guys. And for me, at that time, we had, I think our class that year, the year before that national championship runner-up team, we had 5 sophomores and 5 freshmen, I believe. Very young team, very inexperienced. So, just even making the tournament was quickly not going to happen for us, unfortunately. But we believed in each other, right? We were building those bonds that you need to have as a team. We were each other's friends. We hung out. We helped each other in study hall and stuff like that. It was a great bunch of guys, and we always felt that we were better than we were. And a funny story, that next year, I kept Jared Jack. He was a starting point guard for that team. And I would call him. I got drafted, and I was in Toronto, very cold. And I had never, I'm from Texas, right? Like most of us here, I've never experienced a winter. So I'm going through Toronto winters. It's March. It's still snowing, and I'm watching them cut the nets down to go to the Final Four. And, I was so happy but so sad at the same time because I wanted to be with my buddies, Yeah. Sometimes people think money is everything and opportunity or the NBA is everything. I wanted nothing better than to be going down to San Antonio with my team to compete in the Final Four. But, it just didn't happen. And I was so happy for those guys. But, it's just a part of the basketball story, man. I was just glad I could be here and take it in.
Absolutely. And the last thing we'll talk about is we all know how it ended up, where your multiple NBA All-Star appearances, the 2 championships. But the last thing I want to talk about is that draft class. Like, when you really think about that, highly regarded as one of the greatest draft class, if not the greatest draft class ever, multiple Hall of Famers, and a guy that's still playing. I mean,
I don't get it.
How does that work? But Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Chris Bosh, to be included in that company, to know that. And for the record, Coach Hewitt told me, he's like, I called everybody in the front office in Detroit and said, draft Chris. Trust me, no draft dog. And it was funny he said that, but he truly meant it. But what was that like? Do you have any idea at that time, looking back 22 years later, that would be like, wow, that class is...
No, of course not. LeBron, we had been knowing each other since we were 16. Same with Carmelo. Me and Dwayne had the same agent coming into the NBA draft. Kirk Heinrich, TJ Ford. I had been knowing TJ Ford for years. You really don't think that it's going to be the greatest of all time. I was honestly worried about myself, you know. It's good to see like some fellow passengers on the ride that you're familiar with, but for the most part, I was concentrated on my craft. Since I was a kid, all I wanted to do was be a ball player. You know, that's all I ever wanted to do. So I was willing to do it. Since my dad, you know, told me I don't have enough money for college, so you're going to have to get a scholarship. You know, play ball, that's great. So that's all I ever wanted to do. I just kept at it and kept at it. And, you know, I have to say, man, with a little bit of luck and hard work, we're here.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to share is another Paul Hewitt gem that he showed me about. He said, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to get him. Everyone wants him, but he said he showed up to the ABCD camp, and he said, you were there with most of those guys you just mentioned. And he goes, yeah, all those other guys, they're pretty cool teenagers, you know, acting cool. He said, man, Chris sees Coach Hewitt, lights up like a Christmas tree. He's like, Coach, what's up, Coach?
Yeah.
So, and the rest is history. So all those mentors and special people you had in your life, you've always had a championship team, regardless of what city it's been in, long before you ever got on the court and long after getting off it. One more time, give it up for the Hall of Famer, the legend.
Thank you,
Most
everybody.
importantly, an amazing person
Yeah.
beyond the game of basketball, Chris Bosh.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
And with that, as I mentioned,